and I don't make any apologies for it. We will restore science to its rightful place and wield technology's wonders to raise healthcare's quality and lower its costs. All this we can do. All this we will do. We are done. More Americans now die every year from drug overdoses than they do from motor vehicle crashes. We've all got a role to play. These are our kids. It's not somebody else's kids. It's our kids. It's not somebody else's neighborhood. It's our neighborhood. And they deserve every chance. You know, last year, Vice President Biden said that with a new moonshot, America can cure cancer. Tonight I'm announcing a new national effort to get it done. And because he's gone to the mat for all of us on so many issues over the past 40 years, I'm putting Joe in charge of mission control. For the loved ones we've all lost, for the families that we can still save, let's make America the country that cures cancer once and for all. What do you say, Joe? Let's make it happen. Our Precision Medicine Initiative has been designed to get all these various building blocks brought together so that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. We may be able to accelerate the process of discovering cures in ways that we've never seen. Hello, everybody.
Yeah.
How cool is this?
It's amazing.
You don't always have a capsule around. About half an hour ago, I had the chance to meet an extraordinary young man named Nathan Copeland. And back in 2004, Nathan was a freshman in college, studying advanced sciences, interested in nanotechnology, and he was in a car accident that left him paralyzed. But one day he was contacted by a research team at Pitt, and they asked if he wanted to be involved in an experimental trial supported by DARPA. Since he was a scientist himself, Nathan readily agreed. So they implanted 4 microelectrode arrays into his brain, each about the size of half a button. And those implants connect neurons in his brain with a robotic arm, so that today he can move that arm the same way you and I do, just by thinking about it. Nathan is also the first person in human history who can feel with his prosthetic fingers. Think about this. He hasn't been able to use his arms or legs for over a decade, but now he can once again feel the touch of another person. So we shook hands. He had a strong grip, but he had kind of toned it down. And then we gave each other a fist bump. You want to blow it up or That is unbelievable. That's what science does. That's what American innovation can do. And imagine the breakthroughs that are around the corner. And that's why I've been so committed to science and innovation, not just so that we can restore someone's sense of touch, but so we can revitalize communities, revitalize economies, reignite our shared sense of possibility and optimism. So let's keep it going. Let's get to work.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. David Grubb and Mrs. Kate Grubb.
People may not know this, but President Obama and I have a number of things in common. First, we're both left-handed, and we tend to write like this. We also are former community organizers. We are former state senators. And we are the father of daughters who we love and cherish more than anything in the world. When President Obama came to my community, our community, in Charleston, West Virginia, a little over a year ago, I spoke to him about our daughter, Jessica. Jessie was the second born of our 5 daughters, an amazing individual, smart, straight A's, the kind of person that could do just about anything she ever set her mind to, so talented. We thought we had prepared Jessie for just about anything she would ever experience. But we were wrong, because the one thing we hadn't prepared her for was happened to her in her freshman year at the University of North Carolina, when she suffered a sexual assault. Jessie, unfortunately, at that time, tried to dull her pain with something that we never in a million years thought would be part of her life or our family's life: heroin. But at the time of the forum in West Virginia with President Obama, we were so full of hope. Jessie had been doing so well. She had suffered a near-fatal overdose. My wife administered CPR. The paramedics administered naloxone, and Jessie was saved, and it scared her to her core. And she committed herself to sobriety and to life. Our daughter's story, and the interesting thing is, at that forum, I asked President Obama one question, because we had a problem. Jessie was committed to life. She needed treatment. She needed long-care treatment. She wanted it. The closest place that we could find to send Jessie was 6 hours away in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And so the question I asked to President Obama was, what can we do to ensure that we will have the money and resources for the programs, the treatment centers that are needed to address this incredibly widespread epidemic? He said, we're working on it. And here we are, a little over a year later, and we are seeing money dedicated to this problem that will make it possible for people, especially in the hardest hit areas of our country, like West Virginia, like Appalachia, to have the resources, to build the facilities, to do the kinds of education that's absolutely needed so we can address this problem. Jessie's story really underscores the complexity of the problem because, as I mentioned, she was clean and sober. She was doing great. 7 months, she had been doing wonderful, but Jessie was also an athlete. Jessie was a runner, sometimes 8, sometimes 10, sometimes 12 miles a day. She suffered a running injury, and that injury led to an infection that led to her hospitalization, that led to surgery. Despite telling all the medical professionals and the medical personnel that she was a recovering addict, and despite that fact being reflected in the medical records 8 times, when Jessie was discharged, she was given 50 oxycodone pills. That night, Jessie died, March 2nd of this year. Since that time, we have dedicated ourselves to trying to fight back against the stigma of opioid addiction, of drug addiction, so that we can begin the process of treating this as the disease that it is and not as something that needs to be dealt with just through the criminal justice system. We have worked with my friend and my former colleague in the state Senate, Joe Manchin, to introduce legislation called Jesse's Law that, if passed, which I hope it will pass next year, would simply say that you've got to prominently display a voluntarily disclosed in patient's recovering addiction history on electronic health records. The idea being that people who are involved in all the interdisciplinary approaches need to know so that when they're discharged, they're not treated as Jesse was treated. And the idea is to prevent needless deaths. We have wanted to honor Jesse's life and memory through this work, and we're going to continue that the rest of our lives. We received, as you can imagine, hundreds of letters and notes from all over the world expressing sympathy and condolence. But the one that we received that was the most memorable was the handwritten, heartfelt note that we received from President Obama. It will always have a special place in our family's heart, and it will always have a special place on our mantle. I know that Vice President Biden understands the pain that we have been going through this last year. The loss of a child, no matter what the cause, changes a parent forever. And it has changed us. And this is a bond that we share with Vice President Biden and with families, too many families, throughout this country. The one thing that I said some time ago was, I wish that we would have an opportunity sometime to thank the President for the work he's done and to thank those who are working on this issue. So what I would like to do right now is just to say the deepest sense of gratitude, and with the knowledge that we are going to miss their leadership and their integrity, I would like to introduce to you the President and the Vice President of the United States.
Mr. President, it's a lousy club, but proud of you. We're all proud of you. Mr. President, my Senate colleagues, all the members of Congress who are here and worked so hard to get this bill done today, just let me say that last week I had the honor of presiding, probably for the last time, in the United States Senate, over the Senate as, Mr. President, they moved to pass the 21st Century Cures Act. And as I said, it's probably one of the last times that I will get to preside over the Senate, and maybe one of the most important moments in my career. On behalf of the administration, let me thank all the bipartisan leadership here. I want to make this clear. This bill would have never occurred without the leading voices, Republican voices, in the House and the Senate, as well as Democrats. It would have never, ever occurred. And I hope this bodes well for what will come next year, that we're back working together. This is a consequential piece of legislation that was extremely important. It cost a lot of money, and it was done in the lame duck session. Without the true bipartisan support, this piece of legislation would have never occurred, and it's going to help millions of people, millions of people. As the President and I talk, he'll talk about this in greater detail in a moment, the 21st Century Cures Act is going to harness America's best minds, science, medicine, and technology to tackle some of our biggest and most complex health challenges today. The bill commits $6.3 billion over 7 years dealing with opioid addiction, precision medicine, and the Brain Initiative, mental illness, Alzheimer's disease, and so much more. But, Mr. President, if you'll excuse, as we both have just done, a point of personal privilege, I want to thank my colleagues. Of that $6.3 billion, $1.8 billion will be invested in cancer research and care. When the President asked me last year at the State of the Union to head the Cancer Moonshot, we said we were going to ask you all for significant funding increases at NIH and the National Cancer Institute. And you all stepped up, again, Republicans and Democrats. As part of the Moonshot, we set up what's called a blue ribbon panel to review what should be the scientific priorities as we tackle this, to try to end cancer as we know it. Try to do in the next 5 years would ordinarily take 10 years. These priorities include investing in promising new therapies like immunotherapy, using the body's own immune system to target and kill cancer cells, enhancing prevention and detection efforts in every community, regardless of the zip code in which you live, supporting research to improve outcomes for children with cancer, and putting us on a path to turn what is currently a devastating cancer diagnosis into either a chronic disease or an absolute cure. And in the process, it will fundamentally, I believe, change the culture of our fight against cancer and inject an overwhelming sense of the urgency, or as the President often says, the urgency of now. And because every single moment counts, as Senator Murray and everybody else who's worked on this bill knows. God willing, this bill will literally, not figuratively, literally save lives. But most of all, what it does, just this mere signing today, Mr. President, as you know better than I do, gives millions of Americans hope. There's probably not one of you in this audience or anyone listening to this who hasn't had a family member, a friend, or someone touched by cancer. You know, and I want to particularly thank my colleagues, and Senator McConnell and Senator Reid, who moved, Mr. President, as you know, to name this section of the bill after our son, Jillian, is here with me today, our son, Bo. As we used to say in the Senate, a point of personal privilege, Mr. President, you know he loved you, and you were wonderful to Bo. And he spent a year in Iraq, came back a decorated veteran, and he was Attorney General of the state, and he never, ever, ever gave up, nor did we. And we had access to some of the best doctors in the world, including the head of the Department of Neuro-Oncology at MD Anderson, become a great friend of ours, Dr. Al Young. Al, thank you for being here. But, you know, as I said, we never gave up, but Jill and I realized that we're not the only family touched by cancer. And so many are touched who don't have nearly the support system we've had. And Mr. President, you lost your mother, and so many other families in here have lost someone to cancer. And as I said, this legislation is going to give hope. Every day, millions of people are praying for hope, praying for time, praying that somehow something will happen just to extend them. They're not even praying for cures most of the time. Those of you who are doctors in the audience, how many times have you heard a patient say, "Doc, can just give me just 3 more weeks so I can walk her down the aisle? Or just give me another 2 months. It's my first grandbaby. I want to see him or her born." It's all a matter of hours, days, weeks, months. And what we're doing here now is this is going to accelerate exponentially, in my view, the kinds of efforts we can make right now, things that are at our disposal right now to extend life. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe President Obama and my colleagues in the Senate, as I said, both parties are motivated by the same commitment that after whom this moonshot was named. And President Kennedy had talked about going to the moon. Problem is, there's only one moon, there's 200 and some cancers. But here's what he said. He said, we are unwilling to postpone. We all here are unwilling to postpone. Unwilling to postpone another minute, another day, in doing what we know is within our grasp. It shows the government at its best, Mr. President, and it shows that our politics can still come together to do big, consequential things for the American people. I see my friend Senator Hatch, who I worked with for years and years, who stood up in this. All junior senators, senior senators, everyone came together. So Jill and I are proud to stand beside you, Mr. President, as you sign this last law of our administration. Proud to have served with you, Mr. President, and your absolute commitment to changing the way in which we deal with our healthcare system. It's going to make a big difference. And this particular bill is going to allow people to live longer, and live healthier. And so, but most of all, Mr. President, I think it gives people hope. So, ladies and gentlemen, I always kid the president that when he asked me to join him on the ticket, my daughter came home at lunch. She's a social worker, and she said, "Did he call? Did he call?" And I said, "Yes." She said, "You said yes, didn't you, Daddy?" And I said, "Yes, of course I did." She said, "This is wonderful." She, "You know how you're always quoting Seamus Heaney about hope and history rhyming?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "This is hope and history. I'm history, here's hope." Ladies and gentlemen, President of the United States.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Oh, no need. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. All of them. Thank you. Please have a seat. Thank you so much. Well, welcome to the White House, everyone. It's December, so it's holiday time around here, and we thought it was a good occasion to have one more party. And this is a celebration worth having. I want to first of all thank Joe Biden and Jill Biden and their entire family, who have been such extraordinary friends to us, and what a fitting way for us to be able to signify our partnership as our time comes to an end together. It makes me feel very good. I want to thank David and Kate Grubb for sharing their family's story. As David said, we have a lot in common, nothing more than the love of our children, our daughters. When I first met them in Charleston, their story was unfortunately more common than we would have liked. And I indicated a number of the people on this stage are people who have gone through tough times or have seen their loved ones suffer, either because of opioid addiction or because of cancer, who have bravely shared their story and channeled their passion into increasing the urgency all of us feel around this issue. And so more than anything, this is a testimony to them and an extraordinary commemoration of those that they've loved. So we're very grateful to them. Please give them a big round of applause. We're joined by a whole bunch of members of Congress here today, and it is wonderful to see how well Democrats and Republicans in the closing days of this Congress came together around a common cause. And I think it indicates the power of this issue and how deeply it touches every family across America. Over the last 8 years, one of my highest priorities as president has been to unleash the full force of American innovation to some of the biggest challenges that we face. That meant restoring science to its rightful place. It meant funding the research and development that's always kept America on the cutting edge. It's meant investing in clean energy that's created a steady stream of good jobs and helped America become the world's leader in combating climate change. It meant investing in the medical breakthroughs that have the power to cure disease and help all of us live healthier, longer lives. So I started the 2016 State of the Union address by saying we might be able to surprise some cynics and deliver bipartisan action on the opioid epidemic. And in that same speech, I put Joe in charge of mission control on a new cancer moonshot. And today, with the 21st Century Cures Act, we are making good on both of those efforts. We are bringing to reality the possibility of new breakthroughs to some of the greatest health challenges of our time. Joe's already indicated some of the scope of the bill, but let me repeat it because it's worth repeating. First, this legislation is going to combat the heroin and prescription opioid epidemic that is ravaging too many families across the country. This is an epidemic that can touch anybody, blue collar, white collar, college students, retirees, kids, moms, dads. I've had the chance to meet people from every stage of recovery who are working hard to sustain the progress that they're making. And I've met parents like the Grubbs who work tirelessly to help a child struggling with addiction. It could not be clearer that those of us called upon to lead this country have a duty on their behalf, that we have to stand by them, that all too often they feel as if they're fighting this fight alone instead of having the community gather around them and give them the resources and the access and the support that they need. So today, I could not be prouder that this legislation takes up the charge I laid down in my budget to provide $1 billion in funding so that Americans who want treatment can get started on the path to recovery and don't have to drive 6 hours to do it. It is the right thing to do, and families are ready for the support. Second, the Cures Act provides a decade's worth of support for two innovative initiatives from my administration. The first is the BRAIN Initiative, which we believe will revolutionize our understanding of the human mind. And when I sign this bill into law, we'll give researchers new resources to help identify ways to treat, cure, and potentially prevent brain disorders like Alzheimer's and epilepsy, traumatic brain injury, and more. And we're also going to support what we've called our Precision Medicine Initiative, an effort we started to use data to help modernize research and accelerate discoveries so that treatment and healthcare can be tailored specifically to individual patients. This spring, with the help of this legislation, the National Institutes of Health plans to launch a groundbreaking research cohort, inviting Americans from across the country to participate to support the scientific breakthroughs of tomorrow. Number three, the Cures Act improves mental health care. It includes bipartisan reforms to address serious mental illness. It takes steps to make sure that mental health and substance use disorders are treated fairly by insurance companies, building on the work of my presidential task force, and it reauthorizes meaningfully suicide prevention programs. Many of these reforms align with my administration's work to improve our criminal justice system, helping us enhance data collection and take steps so that we're not unnecessarily incarcerating folks who actually need mental health assistance. Fourth, we're building on the FDA's work to modernize clinical trial design so that we're updating necessary rules and regulations to protect consumers so that they're taking into account this genetic biotech age. And we're making sure that patients' voices are incorporated into the drug development process. And finally, the Cures Act invests in a breakthrough effort that we've been calling the Vice President's Cancer Moonshot. And I think the Senate came up with a better name when they named it after Beau Biden. Joe said, Bo loved me, I loved him back. And like many of you, I believe that the United States of America should be the country that ends cancer once and for all. We're already closer than a lot of folks think, and this bill will bring us even closer, investing in promising new therapies, developing vaccines, and improving cancer detection and prevention. Ultimately, it will help us reach our goal of getting a decade's worth of research in half the time. And as Joe said, that time counts. In this effort, Joe Biden has rallied not just Congress, but he has rallied a tremendous collection of researchers and doctors, philanthropists, patients. He's showing us that with the right investment and the ingenuity of the American people, to quote him, there isn't anything we can't do. So I'd like everybody to just please join me in thanking what I consider to be the finest vice president in history, Joe Biden. Go ahead and embarrass Joe. Go ahead. Hey! Why not? So we're tackling cancer, brain disease, substance use disorders, and more. And none of this work would have been possible without bipartisan cooperation in both houses of Congress. A lot of people were involved, but there are some folks who deserve a special shout out. That includes Senators Alexander and Senators Murphy. Representatives Upton, Pallone, and DeGette. And Green. And of course, we couldn't have gotten across the finish line without the leadership of Nancy Pelosi and Steny Hoyer, who are here. As well as leaders from both houses, Speaker Ryan, leaders McConnell and Reid, and Senator Patty Murray. Not to mention all the members of Congress who are sitting here that I can't name, otherwise I'm going to be here too long and I will never sign the bill. But you know who you are. I want to thank all of you on behalf of the American people for this outstanding work. These efforts build on the work that we've done to strengthen our healthcare system over the last 8 years, covering pre-existing conditions, expanding coverage for mental health and substance use disorders, helping more than 20 million Americans know the security of health insurance. Thanks to the Affordable Care Act, it means they have access to some of the services that are needed. I'm hopeful that in the years ahead, Congress keeps working together in a bipartisan fashion to move us forward rather than backward in support of the health of our people, because these are gains that have made a real difference for millions of Americans. So this is a good day. It's a bittersweet day. I think it's important to acknowledge that it's not easy for the Grubbs to come up here and talk about Jesse. It's not easy for Joe and Jill, I know, to talk about Bo. Joe mentioned my mother, who died of cancer. She was 2.5 years younger than I am today when she passed away. And so it's not always easy to remember, but being able to honor those we've lost in this way and to know that we may be able to prevent other families from feeling that same loss, that makes it a good day. and I'm confident that it will lead to better years and better lives for millions of Americans, the work that you've done. That's what we got sent here for, and it's not always what we do. It's a good day to see us doing our jobs. So with that, I think it's time for me to sign this bill into law.
Get over here, Jilly girl.
Get close. All right. Those of you who have not attended this before, I have to use all these pens. They were talking about the cloth. But it works for us, right? I don't care what other people say. There we go.
All right.
Hey, Max. How are you, man? Good to see you, buddy. How are you, man? Thanks for getting this done. Tell you what, man.
She's not either. Oh, you got everything? I did. No, either.
Thank you.